this computer. And share screen. Okay, top of the hour, starting. Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's online summit, Managed Wi-Fi for MDUs ready for prime time. My name is Adlan Fela. I'm a chief analyst at Maravedis and its venture MDU experts. I'm really excited and proud to welcome you today. This event has been on the making for almost 2 months. And what started as a small webinar following the release of a market report on July 12 converted into an online summit with 8 industry leaders and over 350 registered. So really, really excited and nervous. The great response from the market today reflects the excitement of the market opportunity for managed Wi-Fi in multi-dwelling units. While there are viewers from around the world, the summit today is focused on the US market. I want to thank our sponsors, particularly Cambio Networks, for their great support, and all our speakers for helping promote the event and sharing their time and insights today. Today's agenda is packed with great presentations from speakers representing MSPs, equipment vendors, and the NMHC. We're also lucky to have such great leaders part of the ecosystem to discuss regulation, business models, market trends, and technology. After each speaker has shared their views on the market, we will open the summit for a panel. And it will be then my pleasure to welcome our special guest, Phelan Ross, Senior Director and Ancillary Services at Avalon Bay Communities. He will provide us the property owner's ultimate perspective. We will then open the Q&A for questions from the audience. The event today will last about 2 hours. Some housekeeping items. The event is being recorded, and you will receive the slide deck along with the recording within the next 24 hours. We want you to tell us how we did at the end of the webinar. You will get a link to fill out a survey. And we want to know what we missed and what we did good. There's some numbers about registrations today. We have a majority of attendees coming from SMPs and MSOs, the communication service providers. We have a decent representation from property management and owners and construction, although we would like to have more. But I think 15% is a pretty decent number. We do have an interesting uptake from system integrators and distributors who are very interested in the topic. And the rest is composed of the technology vendors. First of all, I would like to say who is MDU Experts and why are we organizing this event today in the first place. MDU Experts is the new venture by Maravedis dedicated to consulting, research, tools, and lead generation for the MDU. For those who never heard about Maravedis, we have been a boutique wireless infrastructure firm since 2002. Our main proposition for the MDU market is to bring those years of wireless experience in the multifamily space for helping you with vendor evaluation, RFP preparation, business case modeling, and Wi-Fi deployment strategies. Tools that we are planning to offer include a deployment guidelines, list of MSPs, system integrators, and developers. Our offering is aimed at property owners, MSPs, and technology vendors. Those are some information that's available on our website that's free for download. The most relevant would probably be the case for managed Wi-Fi white paper we produced last year, along with the report I'll be discussing today. So let's start with a definition here. How it's important we establish what we're talking about and the differences between bulk internet and managed Wi-Fi. We look at bulk internet as a service that provides a community with internet. It means that a bulk internet contract covers every unit in the building using a single provider. Managed Wi-Fi is a bit more complex. It involves designing, installing, and professionally managing the wireless network throughout the property, independently of who owns the equipment. While not everyone on the call would agree with this definition, the idea is managed Wi-Fi will provide a reliable infrastructure layer inside the unit and throughout the property to ensure seamless, secure, and reliable wireless access everywhere. And this is the foundation for providing facility IoT in the building as well. Another important aspect we need to establish, what are the benefits of managed Wi-Fi and why are we meeting today? For residents, managed Wi-Fi means a better overall connectivity experience with predictable and superior performance, coverage, and security. It also means thanks to Wi-Fi calling, mobile coverage issues are resolved. Residents can also enjoy the much desired benefits of a connected smart home without having to deal with the complexity of IoT or being locked into a separate contract for internet. What's in it for property owners? We'll hear more about it today. But for property owners and managers, Wi-Fi translates into more ancillary revenues and better operational efficiencies, which then result in a better net operating income, NOI. They can increase the value and retention rate of their properties and deploy facility IoT to automate select processes such as visiting new apartments, reducing waste, and also empowering their staff with tools to be more effective. What's in it for CSPs, the communication service providers, whether they're MSOs, LECs, or MSPs? It's that managed Wi-Fi translates into longer-term contracts and more predictable revenues. They no longer need to engage into a race to the bottom, offering a dumb pipe at always cheaper rates. So let's look at the market drivers. There are 6 of them that we have identified. First most is the new constructions of multifamily units. It's continuing to rise in 2022. Almost 1 million multifamily unit buildings were under constructions as of March of this year, the highest number in half a century. The market opportunity for providing managed Wi-Fi to these new constructions is impressive. Given that more than 2 million units will be built in the next 5 years, this is even more impressive. The second driver we believe is that multifamily rental demand is undergoing a generational transformation. According to a survey by Parcel Pending, 90% of millennials are renters, and their generation represents 40% of the entire housing market. Home technology is at the center of this new generation's life, and the COVID pandemic has accelerated the trend with hybrid working. So today, basically, residents live in smaller units that have bigger amenities, such as Wi-Fi. The other important aspect is that we have more devices. In average, residents have 20 devices, most of which rely on Wi-Fi. They also rely increasingly on connected smart home applications, such as smart lighting, thermostats, and door locks in their daily lives. As a result of all these trends, residents have really more expectation when it comes to connectivity. To consumers, Wi-Fi equals the internet and vice versa. An inefficient Wi-Fi will frustrate residents or their guests, impacting their retention. And as a result, Wi-Fi has become the new utility or necessity. Another important aspect that's driving the market is the fact that the growing presence of institutional investors in the conventional rental market It has important implications because these tend to adopt new technology to improve efficiency. And managed Wi-Fi can be a real differentiator for owners and developers to attract and retain residents. Larger corporate property owners are more likely to have professionally installed and managed connected properties, which will increase and reduce our cost. As a last driver, I initially had put the FCC regulation on multi-family units, but my discussions with most of the stakeholders have indicated that it was more of a marketing play that didn't have necessarily the largest impact on the market. Instead, I put network as a service, where hardware, software, services, and management and licensing components are consumed increasingly and accepted as a subscription-based model. And this is happening in the MDU space, and it's also happening in enterprise campuses. The NAS model is driven by the fact that enterprises, and that includes property managers, are enabled to keep pace with the technology innovations in a context of lack of skilled labor, and the fact that security attacks are prevalent and requires enterprises to be on top of that. So NAS has become a way to go for MDUs to serve the communities. The research I'm sharing with you today comes from the market report we published in July 12 of this year. The report, which took about 4 months to produce, is composed of three aspects, three parts. The first was the online survey, which was conducted between April and June, and focused on connectivity issues for the MDU. We asked respondents about 18 questions and collected 152 responses, mainly from property owners and MSPs. Second aspect was composed of one-on-one interviews with the MSPs and technology providers, as well as industry associations. A third part was we built market projections for both total addressable market and our expectations of how the market will grow in the next 5 years. There's a link at the bottom where you can access the brochure for the report. And so the first part of the online survey, we included here demographics of the responses. But third came from the property side, as you can see here in yellow. A third came from communication service providers, including MSPs and MSOs. And the rest was really split between system integrators, distributors, and industry associations. It's worth noting that technology vendors were excluded from participating to the survey. The first finding we have is most respondents who already have managed Wi-Fi or were about to offer it saw the top three drivers around improving the residents' experience by increasing Wi-Fi coverage throughout the property and easing the onboarding process. Is also an aspect that managed Wi-Fi also enables them to do. And of course, making Wi-Fi more secure, which we'll discuss in other presentations. So managed Wi-Fi enables more of an orderly deployment, especially now that we have smaller units, more units, and so more RF propagation issues that can arise. Today, less than 1% of all brownfield rental properties and less than 10% rental units built in the last 5 years have fully managed Wi-Fi to residents. So we built our market projections by breaking down properties by age and size. From there, we built our own projections for the taller market evolution. The brownfield properties here in blue and green represent the most significant potential market for Wi-Fi. The majority of the rental unit stock is composed of properties older than 5 years, and 2/3 of these brownfield properties have less than 100 units. So deploying managed Wi-Fi in these properties can be more challenging, and I mean that towards the brownfield properties, because of the need to retrofit the existing wiring and telco infrastructure. Pierre from Positron will discuss some technologies that can enable that in the brownfield environment. Properties with over 100 to 150 units are primary candidates, in our belief, and for adopting managed Wi-Fi. Over time, the proportion of rental units with over 100 units will be increasing, as we discussed earlier, because new rental developments tend to provide more units that are smaller in size. This is my final slide here. We present the expected bulk internet revenue separately for MSPs and property owners. We believe managed Wi-Fi services are expected to reach $6 billion by 2028. Property owners charge residents a substantial markup on top of the rate they pay to MSPs or MSOs for internet. In the report, we also provide the expected revenues for the support and maintenance that MSP charge properties owners for the wireless infrastructure, maintenance and support side, excluding internet access. So in a nutshell, for ISPs and MSPs competing on price for broadband, managed Wi-Fi really is a golden opportunity to escape the race to the bottom and generate handsome revenues over longer term contracts. We're bullish about the market. In conclusion, we believe that managed Wi-Fi in the MDU is a very large market opportunity, and we believe the market is ready for prime time and will be profitable for all stakeholders. And that's all for me today. Thank you very much for your attention. I would like now to invite Kevin Donnelly from the NMHC to share his views. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Adelaine. Hope everyone is doing well. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. For those of you on this webinar that are not familiar with NMHC, I'll take a second just to give you a sense of who the council is and what we do here in Washington. NMHC is the leading trade group across the country that represents owners, operators, developers of the apartment industry, typically 5+ multifamily units. Many of our owners are big brand names that you know, but we have a significant population of owners that go, to the much smaller scale, operate across every jurisdiction in the country, and operate properties of all types, which lends itself very well to this conversation. Clearly, as Adelaine did a great job giving you a sense of where the market is in terms of demand and what we see coming down the pike in terms of the need for supply, new supply, but also a key piece of meeting the housing demand in this country is preservation of existing housing stock. So I think Adelaine's exactly right in focusing on that opportunity in the brownfield space. But for us, our core membership being the owner, operator, developer, that is how we approach technology. We do have supplier partners, many of whom are on this call today, and we appreciate, the work they do in ensuring connectivity at our properties. And so I thought today what I would do is really build off of where Adelaine took us and talk about managed Wi-Fi and broadband service from the from the residents' perspective, which emphasizes why the ownership and operators across multifamily take broadband so seriously. So as many of you know, we do every 2 years, we do a renter preferences survey report. It's the largest in the country. This survey from 22 looked at over 220,000 resident responses, 12 of the largest apartment companies, nearly 5,000 properties. And what you see is not going to surprise you. Renters love internet. They value high-speed internet. And, each year we see that tick up. Now, if you're in some climate challenged areas of this country, air conditioning may eke out the win by a point or two, but broadband typically is there at the top of the list. This stat says itself, says everything for you. We won't rent without high-speed internet, 54%. That too ticks up. And I think we'll get to a demographic slide here in a little bit. But what do they do daily on the internet? This will come as no surprise either. I think streaming video, I think what the pandemic really taught us was how central someone's home is to their ability to live, entertain, educate, access healthcare, and so on. So all of these things put together, really have tested the networks that we've had in place. Fortunately, during the pandemic, multifamily did extremely well. I think that's because of the investments on both the provider and the operator and owner side of multifamily, to really support these consumer preferences and demands. And then most, in the overwhelming majority, 86%, renters are satisfied with their internet, or at least neutral. Dissatisfied, those who are dissatisfied, we polled the 13% who said they were dissatisfied. Some wanted a different internet provider if there was choice at the property, or if it was a bulk system and they wanted choice. Too many service outages, something that I think we can all appreciate and we'll touch on throughout this webinar. And then it doesn't fully support my needs for whatever reason. And I think that's something that our ownership is extremely sensitive to, especially in such a highly competitive and tight multifamily market. Resident satisfaction across the board is extremely important. And then top 3 factors when evaluating service, we see reliability, clearly key, cost of service, another 64%, and then speed, 74%, which I know we'll touch on later today. But oftentimes we at NMHC joke that most people don't know what a gigabit really is, but they appreciate the moniker or the buzzword around it and they glom onto it. So it is something that our owners do have to take into consideration when they're working to deploy service. And then how important is it to have your internet service available immediately on move-in? This is something we see very important or absolutely essential, 83%. I think that lends itself very well to this conversation today. And then absolutely essential is 48%. I think managed Wi-Fi, and we can talk on this during the panel too. Here you have 62% saying, they're interested in pre-installed Wi-Fi. They don't want to have to touch anything or have to deal with the back end or service providers or setting up accounts and so on. And when you look at the breakdown, interest in pre-installed Wi-Fi, it kind of flips where you have the younger folks who are willing to deal with routers and modems and so on. Older generations definitely are more hands-off and want it to be a seamless turnkey service, which lends itself well. And then, we'll talk on this during the panel discussion as well. But obviously NMHC is predominantly a federally facing advocacy organization for the industry. So we track tech and telecom policy here in Washington, where I'm based. And I think there's a couple of big pieces that we continually monitor, but have some impact in this conversation. One is obviously the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, the regulatory landscape around broadband deployment, adoption, access, and the way it ultimately regulates or oversees the market and interaction or relationship between broadband providers and property owners. The FCC about a year ago put out an updated set of rules that guide that relationship, most notably banning graduated revenue share agreements, but left much of the marketplace intact, which we took as a testament to how well multifamily is really doing in comparison to the broader consumer market when it comes to choice, availability, reliability, and so on. A really key program that we're focusing on right now with many of our housing partners is what's in DC known as the BEAD program. Many of our broadband providers on this call will know a lot about it. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime historic opportunity that stems from President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law, where Congress explicitly authorized low-income multifamily properties to benefit from historic $42.5 billion of broadband deployment funds. And in doing so, they specified that owners would be eligible to access that funding to provide things such as managed Wi-Fi. to provide reduced cost or free service to residents, upgrade or maintain infrastructure. Because as we have argued with the FCC, or told the FCC for many years, the problem in multifamily broadband is not necessarily across the broader multifamily market. It is really hyper focused on that lower income band where the economics or the ROI is just not there for a provider to carry that expense on their own. And ultimately, the property owner is, especially in those segments of the market, the lower income space, really does not have the capital to be able to deploy on their own. So they really do need this government support. So we're working aggressively to make sure owners and providers are fully aware of the program as it gets rolled out through the states over the next year or so. And then relatedly is a key program for us on the renter side, the Affordable Connectivity Program. Right now, nearly 20 million American families benefit from this subsidy program. It is in danger of running out of funds over the next year. So we're working in coalitions to make sure that does not happen. But just yesterday, the Department of Housing and Urban Development here in DC and the FCC announced a new partnership and a data sharing agreement, which should boost eligibility and reduce some of the the enrollment barriers that we've seen, the paperwork requirements and so on for housing choice voucher recipients, some public housing residents, and then project-based rental assistance communities. So we are hopeful these three pieces together really ultimately support a lot of the good work that the providers here are doing. And then I think, when we look at these issues and digital divide and the way managed Wi-Fi really has a role to play in eradicating that, especially at the lower income space of our industry, we really look at things like housing equity. It's no longer, for so long, the industry is focused on housing affordability and supply, our bread and butter issues. But we have at NMHC really taken a step back and put out a new report in June, Opening Doors of Opportunity, a guide to improving housing equity. And it really, one key part of that is broadband deployment, adoption, and access. And if folks are interested in that, I'm happy to drop the link to that report in the chat. But it's a guide for both industry stakeholders and policymakers to understand how we can actually ensure housing is a vehicle of opportunity, and clearly broadband is a key piece of that. And so I'll close here and turn it back to the other speakers. As always, NMHC hosts one of the leading industry tech and operations conferences, November 1st to 3rd at the Wynn in Las Vegas this year. Much of what we will be talking about today will be a very hot topic and packed rooms, I'm sure, at this year's OpTech. So with that, Adeline, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Exactly 10 minutes. I congratulate you. Thank you so much. Amazing presentation. Thanks. So our next speaker is going to be Brian Rader, president of MDU at Pavlov Media. Brian has been very helpful during the preparation of this summit, and everybody seems to agree that he's like been around the industry for such a long time that he's almost considered the godfather of MDU. So Brian, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I now feel like the old man in the room, which maybe I am. I used to go to these sessions many years ago, and I was the youngest guy in the room. Now I'm on the other side, but I do appreciate the opportunity. I'm the president of MDU for Pavlov Media, and today's topic is around managed Wi-Fi and how we got here and why it matters. As we look back over the last 40 years in our business, I think it's really helpful to get the perspective over time as we lead up to bulk managed Wi-Fi. So I'm going to take us back through several generations. The 1980s, which, by the way, was the best era for music. I don't know if the rest of the panel agrees, but I'll start there. Clearly the best era for music. But in the 1980s, when the concept of multifamily tech really started to take hold, tech at the time meant analog, 450 megahertz, one-way coax, often strung across the ground and hanging outside of buildings to just capture cable TV channels. But that's where the industry was. And back at that time, the real estate owners were predominantly looking to get cable TV, and that's all they were looking for. That evolved into the 90s when it was all about access to analog programming, not just the 30 channels that were offered by the franchise cable companies, but a broadening of channel lineup and actually looking for ways to customize channels. This mattered to property owners. Back in the 90s, I know we live today in an era of 98% occupancy and 10% a year rental growth. But for many years in our industry, that wasn't the case. And back in the 90s, that clearly, for many periods of time in many markets, was not the case. Property owners were looking for ways to be different and special. And even something as simple as having 50 or 60 customized channels, even though they were analog, was a unique way for owners to be different. In the early 2000s, that evolved to digital programming and high-speed internet. I call it high-speed internet, but for any of you that were around at that time, high-speed internet was probably, I don't know, 20K. Maybe it was a very modest term to call high speed. But the real estate community was eager to get high-speed internet brought to their property, whether it came from coax or Ethernet. They were desirous of having something that was high speed. And so there was an arms race looking for alternatives to have providers bring high-speed internet to their community. Once again, the issue was, how can I be first in my submarket? How can I be different? How can I satisfy my residents? How can I give them a better experience living on my community? That evolved in the early 2000s to this concept of choice. And for many years, property owners didn't want one provider. They needed two providers. So they had a big cable company, a big phone company, or a big independent provider offering TV and internet services. And so that worked for a number of years. There were no longer exclusive agreements, but rather exclusive marketing agreements or non-exclusive agreements where owners could have 2 or 3 providers duke it out and the resident could pick and choose. But here was the problem with that. While owners like choice, and Kevin brought this up in his session, that some of the dissatisfied pointed to the fact that they didn't have choice any longer. Choice also came with some liabilities. Number one, technicians would come to do an install and disconnect the wrong unit. Number two, you had people that were cutting other people's cable or cords. You had to wait for the guy to show up 4 or 5 days later. You had to pay an install fee. You had to pay a deposit. It was often confusing. And there was a lot of infrastructure that got into the way when you had multiple providers fighting over shared infrastructure in many cases. So that led to the next generation, which was the 2010s, when the business became really a rush to get better internet, better high speed, and it became a race for fiber. And really starting around the early 2010s, when Google Fiber launched in Kansas City, you started to see a desire for gigabit fiber or gigabit speeds over fiber. And so owners were craving ways to bring fiber to their community. And ultimately, that led to bulk internet. One of the challenges has been that when you move in and you have to wait 5 to 7 days and call an 800 number and set up an account and wait for someone to come and do an install, that really affected the onboarding process, and bulk internet solved for that. And today, as we'll go through 3 or 4 of these core themes, managed Wi-Fi became the ideal platform for bulk internet in the last several years. Those 5 themes, if you go back to the 1980s, were the key objectives of property owners throughout this past 40 years. Looking for resident experience, more convenience, obviously economic incentives. Can I charge for this? Can I charge more rent for this? Will I have greater occupancies or more stronger resident retention? Addressing common areas and office locations. This has often been the afterthought, but in reality, common areas and office locations are a key area of the community and a core objective of real estate owners. The distinction versus competition, whether it's a higher speed, a better price, quicker service, those are things that owners have always looked for over the last 40 years, and then ultimately creating value for the resident. There are 3 things, though, that have changed in this last era over the last 5 years, and I'll run through those rather quickly. The first one is, if you've toured a multifamily community recently, particularly a new construction community, you've seen an explosion in high-end amenities, not just pickleball courts or yoga studios or pet spas or fitness centers and cardio rooms. It's a never-ending process. The floor plans are getting smaller and the amenity spaces are getting larger. We used to talk in the 1990s about cocooning. Cocooning is what residents used to do. They would pull into the property at the end of a long day at work, get out of their car, run to their apartment, and they wouldn't leave until the next morning at 8 o'clock when they ran out and got back in their car and left the property. That doesn't happen today. Developers are building into the communities ways for residents to engage with others. They have areas around fitness centers and outdoor amenity spaces and pet walking areas. In fact, the pet population now exceeds parking spot numbers in many properties. So we've seen, see that the behavior of residents has changed a lot. They're outside their apartment homes, not inside their apartment homes. And all of these amenity locations have created a desire and a requirement for connectivity throughout the community, not just in the home. The second one is behavioral. As Kevin said in his presentation, millennials, 90% of millennials are still renters today. So we know the average age of a renter is younger than the overall average age of Americans today. They're early adopters. They were first to cut the cord. When rev share was the way that most property owners earned revenue in this business, and it was mostly focused on cable TV, about a decade ago, we saw that go from very high to very low, as apartment residents were the very first resident or demographic to cut the cord. They were early adopters to Netflix. They were first to gaming and streaming, and now remote learning, and ultimately working from home. All of this over the last decade has drove an explosion of usage and demand for better connectivity. And the last one is innovation. So with the advent of smart home and IoT features, property owners have looked for ways to create more of a single family environment in multifamily. They're also looking for a way to improve the management of the entire community, whether it's how they manage vacant units or access control, thermostat control, leak detection. A lot of new move-ins are bringing their own smart home features with them, and they want to connect those devices to a Wi-Fi network, and that's changed quite a bit. As owners have looked to make multifamily more like single family, it's putting greater pressure on a wireless network as well. So for all of these reasons, whether it's the ownership groups wanting convenience for their resident, the experience for the resident and greater value, the explosion in amenity areas expanding across multifamily dramatically in the last several years, the concept of residents' usage quadrupling, cutting the cord and moving from traditional TV to only streaming, and smart home features, expanding property management opportunities for greater efficiency and how owners are managing their communities, along with economic options. Look, over the last 40 years, we've always had a desire to look for ways for owners to create economics from prop tech or resident technologies. These themes have always been here, but all of these themes have pointed back to how we got to managed Wi-Fi. And today, bulk managed Wi-Fi has become the ideal solution for multifamily owners. It's the perfect solution infrastructure-wise to address all of these themes, from move in to move out. I don't have to call the guy. I don't have to pick a provider. I don't have to pay a deposit or an installation fee or stay at home from 1 to 5. I don't have to worry about whether someone left a cable modem hanging off of a drop wire in the apartment when they moved out. None of those things matter anymore. It is a seamless onboarding process when done correctly. The amount of usage by staff, the way maintenance staff move around the property, they can now manage the communities, manage their own community by doing work order closeouts with their iPad as they're walking into apartment homes and doing trouble tickets. Better resident experience, not only the connectivity at home, but throughout the entire amenity spaces on properties. And that's really exploded over the last decade. And finally, it's seamless, it's safe, and it's symmetrical. And for all of those reasons, today, bulk managed Wi-Fi has become the platform of choice for property owners looking for the solution that provides the greatest value for their resident, touches on economics, touches on customer satisfaction, and touches on the way they're building and managing communities today. Adeline, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, sir. Great job as well. 10 minutes.
Can I get back to you on that Godfather comment? Because I feel like an old man now.
Now you're a wise man.
Okay.
Sharing your wisdom with us. So thank you so much. By the way, we have 166 people attending right now the show. It's a pretty big crowd out there listening to you. Just a reminder for the audience, you can post a question on the Q&A box, and we'll look at them to answer them after the panel. So now that we have addressed the question why managed Wi-Fi, I'm going to turn to Darren Hermans, Director PLM at Cambium Networks, to tell us how. And so, floor is yours, Darren.
All right. Thank you very much, Adeline. And I got to tell you guys, I learned a few things. Kevin, you had that stat up there. One of your stats there, what people do on the internet, you had a stat of 65% of people making phone calls. I thought, wow, that's higher than I expected. So I took a note on that. You know, interesting about that, Kevin, is around 2019 is when the number of phone calls over Wi-Fi actually is now greater than, started as of the end of 2019, the number of phone calls placed over Wi-Fi is greater than the number of phone calls placed over cellular. That just happened a couple of years ago. So your stat there, is good. I'm really glad you showed that stat, Kevin, because it really validates kind of what's happened elsewhere in the industry. And Brian, I got to say, we should have put up a poll. 80s music. Run DMC, Van Halen, or Duran Duran. Take your pick. Some different genres, but yeah, a great decade for music. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate that a lot. We're going to talk about a little bit of technical stuff. We're going to pivot a little bit here and talk about Wi-Fi 6. We're going to talk about 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi. And that's something that's going to be new, something that's going to become really important in apartment MDU. And it's starting to happen now, and it's going to become more important as the years go on. We're going to talk about mixing some things together, and then how can you wow the tenant? Because ultimately, that's what this is about. I like, Brian, I like your presentation showing what people do, the amenities that they do in the apartments today. It's really important to see those amenities. So a quick primer here on Wi-Fi names. We tried in the industry, and I say we, it wasn't my decision, but I'm in the industry, so I guess I get the blame for it too. We tried to make things easier on understanding the names of different Wi-Fi generations. So they came up with these 4, 5, 6 numbers, and those sounded really good when there's only 4, 5, and 6. But you notice we've got 6E, we've got 7, we've got lots of numbers here, and they don't make a lot of sense, unfortunately. So I'm going to give a little quick primer here as quickly as I can. Green, gold, and blue. Let's keep those colors in mind. Green, I'm using green to reference the original Wi-Fi frequencies, the 2.4 original Wi-Fi. Gold represent the stuff that's vastly the most common, which is the most useful frequencies for Wi-Fi. And then blue is the new stuff. Blue is the new stuff, the 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi that's coming up. So if you notice here, we can't get away without, we have to support all the way back to Wi-Fi 4. We have to, because most of these consumer IoT devices, and I think it was Brian that was mentioning, or maybe it was, actually might have been Adeline, talking about the different consumer IoTs and facilities IoT things in the networks. They're going to use that Wi-Fi 4 technology for the most part. Most of the time you'll see Wi-Fi 4 used for those types of devices, so we can't get rid of that. We're going to have to support that. Wi-Fi 5 is super common, super common. All the tablets, phones, gaming consoles, old printers, PCs, they're supporting 5 gigahertz. So that's an important frequency to use. Wi-Fi 6 is really nice. Wi-Fi 6 is where we're at today. And Wi-Fi 6 has actually had the fastest adoption rate of all previous generations. It only took about 3 years to become the dominant technology in the industry. Why? Because it's excellent for streaming. It's excellent for high density. And it supports both those green and the gold. So it's green and gold. It supports the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz frequencies. So Wi-Fi 6, that's really your baseline for most of where we need to be in terms of Wi-Fi technology. And then as we start to go forward, we absolutely want to take advantage of the 6 gigahertz frequencies that are coming up. And I'll dig into that a little bit more right here. Why? Why do I like that blue one so much? Because it's 1200 megahertz. It's a massive amount of spectrum. Easily twice, if you add up all the 5 gigahertz stuff, and not all that 5 gigahertz stuff is really that useful because those DFS channels there, that 355 megahertz of DFS, it's not always useful in all apartments. Depends upon where the location is And if there's, radar nearby, some of that frequency may not be usable. So not all of it's there. But if you add it all up, it's still twice. It's still easily double. So it's lots of frequency, and it's really easy to use. So we really like 6 gigahertz. That's why there's been a lot of fanfare about it in the last couple of years. The US FCC approved it in May 2020. Today, it is supported by not Apple, unfortunately. So Apple, the iPad Pro does. The MacBook Pro with the M1 or M2 chip, I think M2 chip does, but the iPhones do not. So guess what we're expecting next month, September, and really anticipating. Most people are watching Apple to see what kind of port are they going to put. It can be a Lightning port or a USB port. I don't care myself. I don't care, Lightning port, USB. All I care about is, will Apple support 6 gigahertz in the iPhone 15? We think likely. We think it's likely going to happen. Today, Samsung, Google, a whole bunch of other brands have been supporting 6 gigahertz for quite some time. So we can start to make some predictions. And this is where we put on our funny tinfoil hat, and we make a prediction, and we say 50% of devices in North America will support 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi by October 2024. That's my prediction. We'll see how close I come to that. And Adelaine, you have to call me back next year, and if I'm wrong, you'll have to hit me over the head with a bat for being wrong. But let's see how close we get to that 50% mark. And really, folks, that's just a little over a year from now. That's maybe 13 months from now. I think it'll hit that 50% mark. I think it's going to be that important. In North America, of course, Apple is the dominant share, 55% market share, almost double that of their second rival. Globally, you can see, globally there's a pretty good spread of different devices out there. So we can see that we start to add up these devices and when they're going to support this new 6 gigahertz. You add in Apple when they're going to support it, and then you can start to do some math and you can start to do some calculations based upon the average time that people hold on to their devices and when they typically will do their upgrades. We can use all that math, we can come up with that prediction. So that's my prediction. So that 6 gigahertz is going to be important. So one of the questions you want to ask is, well, what about now? So do I need to be, is this 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi practical? Is it valuable? Is it useful today? Yes, it absolutely is. So let's just take a look here about how we can sort of mix these things together. In the tenant apartments, of course, we still see a predominance of these Wi-Fi 4, Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 6 devices. So you want to stick with that. Your best bang for the buck is sticking with that 2.4 and 5 gigahertz technology in those apartments. And then start to bring in the 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi when you're starting to look at these high density areas. And I think Brian was talking about the importance of some of the public areas. He was talking about sort of these community areas that are designed around these environments that encourage people to coordinate together and to associate together. So in those high density areas that Brian was talking about, that's where you want to start to think about, well, let's bring in that 6 gigahertz, that new technology. So Cambium's got some tools to help you do that. So one of the tools that we have is actually in our cloud system, our cloud management system, and it will just simply report. It will tell you the number of devices that are capable of connecting to 6 gigahertz. Whether or not they are or not, that's a different issue. We can show you that also. But we will report the number of 6 gigahertz capable devices, even if they're connected, they could be off connected to a different Wi-Fi technology. So that's one of the tools that we include in our system. And that's going to help you sort of start to make these decisions and start to understand the impact of 6 gigahertz and sort of predict when 6 gigahertz is going to be important for your apartment, for the MDU community. Coming soon to the US, coming soon to a theater near you, outdoor Wi-Fi 6. Now, I think it was last week, Canada approved it for outdoor Wi-Fi. 6 gigahertz outdoor is now approved in Canada. So if you're our fun neighbors to the north, then you folks are first in the world to do it. And more power to you. I'm really proud of that. It's a fantastic achievement. We do expect that that's put a lot of pressure on the US FCC to finalize their plans and get those approvals done. And those approvals will be done, I believe, in Q4. So we're just a matter of a few months away from outdoor 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi. And Cambium is prepared. So we've got the products already that can extend that capability outdoor. These products that we build in 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi are a little bit unique. What we did is we started building these products, a couple of years ago, because it takes a long time to build a new technology. And we realized that there is this convergence that we need to wait for. And the convergence is hard to predict. So we built a software-defined radio into the AP. So you can take these APs, some of these APs that support 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and you can take that radio, you can just flip it over and run it in 5 gigahertz mode, the gold color there. And so now you can double your capacity in 5 gigahertz because that's the type of devices you have in your particular network. And then at some point in the future, which could be next quarter, by the way, it could be next year, you can flip that radio over and start using that new 6 gigahertz band. So that's how we can start to mix Wi-Fi 4, 5, 6, 6E, all this 6 gigahertz with the 5 gigahertz, and sort of mix it all together and blend it together. What Cambium has done to make this simple is we put all of these products in the same exact firmware. So when we do the intelligent RF management, and when one apartment is able to scan and detect Wi-Fi signals and RF interference signals from another apartment, which apartments are close together, you're going to get those interference. They are RF aware. So whether they're a Wi-Fi, where they support the 4, 5, 6, 6E, all of these APs are RF aware. They know what they're doing, and they know what every other device around them are also doing. And so they're able to adjust automatically to self-heal and to optimize that Wi-Fi. Now that statement right there, that self-healing plug-and-play Wi-Fi, it's easy to say. It's easy for me to just spit that out there. But it actually is very tricky to do in practice. And it is the one thing that fundamentally is different between going down to the local Best Buy and just buy the AP that's sitting on the shelf there, put it in your apartment or put it in your house, versus managed Wi-Fi. It's the key difference. Because if your entire network is not RF aware, if it's not self-optimizing and self-healing, then nothing else we talk about on top will really work well. So when Kevin was talking about people streaming video, it was the number one thing. Kevin, I think you had 80-something% on that. Phone calls was 65%. When you talk about these types of applications, if you can't get the Wi-Fi right, if you can't get the RF done correctly, right, nothing else really works on top of that. So let's get the Wi-Fi done right first. All right, now what can we do? Now we built great Wi-Fi. We've done some good things. We have this self-healing RF. Excellent. Now what can I do with it? What can you do with it? Well, now you can get personal. You can offer a personal Wi-Fi. You can give everybody their personal password. So as they check in, part of the check-in the process is here's your personal password for your own Wi-Fi network. Well, what do I connect to? Well, you connect to Elm Street Apartments or whatever is the name of that Wi-Fi for that particular apartment community. That's what I connect, but I use my personal password. So you get personal with it. Let them put that password on all of their devices. Put it on their Apple TV, their Chromecast, their, whatever things that they have in their house. I think Adelaine said 20 devices, the number he threw out there. So take your 20 devices, customer, Mr. Tenant, put your own personal password on all 20 devices, and you're set. When you do that, keep it private. Make sure it's a private password and it's private VLAN. So now that once you do these things, you've created a secure network that is very flexible, and they can roam across the entire property. They can take it anywhere they go. Exercise room, take it out to the swimming pool, and they're carrying that personal password with them, and that private VLAN goes with them everywhere they go. And that's where it starts to separate and be different from just single family home Wi-Fi, right? Because you can't really do that in a single family home. You walk out of your house, you're going to lose Wi-Fi. In an apartment living, you don't lose the Wi-Fi, don't lose the connection. Now, here's where Cambium is a little bit different than some other vendors. 2,000 keys are cached per access point. Per access point. This is the highest in the industry by 4 times. The nearest product out there is about 500. I think it's maybe 512, but it's 1/4 the capacity of what Cambium does in terms of scalability. 50,000 keys per account, so more than enough keys. Now, now we can run this right inside of our CN Maestro cloud, completely within CN Maestro cloud, but our database is in the cloud. And you can run it right off of our cloud service and use our own database. Gives you this fastest roaming possible because we're going to push those keys right down onto the AP. There's another deployment. There's some other options you can do, using radius servers and things like that. Lots of different options that can be done, but the massive scalability that Cambium delivers is really unique. So this is just a little preview. And I got 1 minute left, 60 seconds. So if you want to know more about a secure network architecture, check out the NSC 3000 from Cambium. If you want to know more about that self-healing plug-and-play Wi-Fi, check out our Wi-Fi 6 APs and 6E. Software-defined radios, we got three great ones to take a look at, and MDU differentiations. If you want to know more about that, take a look at Cambium Network's CN Maestro X. So X is our subscription service to our cloud-based CN Maestro. Check out our SDR software-defined radios. Look into the EPSK scalability. Look into the MSP workflows. Application visibility control. AVC means application visibility control. Take a look at our diagnostics automation, the remote troubleshooting and the machine learning technologies we're building into this that creates that MDU differentiation. All right, with that, Adeline, I'm going to turn it back to you and let you vote on your best 80s rock music.
Thank you, Darren. Very insightful technology overview. I'm sure part of the audience, may be confused, a bit lost about technology terms, but the RF people understand just what you're talking about. So let us now move on back to the MSP view with Shane Rose, who's National Director Managed Wi-Fi Solutions at Cloud5 Communications. Hello, Shane.
Adeline and panel, thank you guys for having us. And I don't think Darren lost too many of us. We all have a good understanding of technology. Yeah, I'm really glad that the 80s rock music became a theme here, right? There's some phenomenal 80s bands touring right now, right? I think you mentioned Duran Duran and Depeche Mode and a few others. So a lot of fun there. But really want to get into what some of the conversation that everybody's been having and talk about managed Wi-Fi. What is it? What does it mean? How are we doing it? Why do people want it? And what are the best ways to do this, right? I think that's one of the key questions people have. So I will try to get through this here in 10 minutes. I'm really transparent. I think we've all heard it. There are really 4 things that I think every owner and every resident out there in the multifamily space is looking for when it comes to internet connectivity and managed Wi-Fi. And that is, they want property-wide managed Wi-Fi. And this is something that Cloud5 is really adamant about. If it's managed professionally, it's curb to curb. It's property-wide. It is a continuous network that goes with the user anywhere on property. And the user could be the resident, it could be a staff member, it could be a prospective resident, right? Somebody that's coming to do a virtual tour. A user could be an IoT device that needs constant connectivity, and managed Wi-Fi could be that backbone or that backhaul for it. The network needs to be reliable, and reliability means always on, and it means redundant. It needs to be a redundant network that should there be a fiber cut down the street because some backhoe operator digging up the road decided to pull up all of the fiber from the primary ISP in the market. So what do you do in that situation, and how do you provide your residents with the assurity that they're going to have continuous connectivity? And that's by ensuring that the MSP that you choose is designing redundant networks. And then speed, right? Everybody talks about speed, gigabit, multi-gigabit. I think Brian referenced back to, kilobits as being referenced as high speed. So, what is speed and what does it matter in terms of the resident and the owner operator? Well, it's meeting the needs of the device or the needs of that specific user, right? If you're on a Zoom call, as we all are right now, we need a specific amount of bandwidth required for an upload speed to maintain the quality of this video. If you don't have that, or you have a best effort internet, perhaps something offered by the MSOs out there in the market that aren't delivering symmetrical bandwidth to the user, you're going to run into challenges. And that was really evident during COVID. The last thing that everybody wants in this market is great support, right? The last thing you want to have to do is get on the phone, call your service provider, and spend 40 minutes on the phone waiting for them to tell you that, we'll get a truck out to you in a few weeks. So those are things that everybody addresses. I think we're all in agreement that that's kind of the state of the market. Cloud 5, we're a true managed Wi-Fi company. And what does that mean? You hear that a lot about what is managed Wi-Fi. And, we provide end-to-end managed Wi-Fi solutions. We design them, we install them, we support them, and we manage it ongoing. So our networks are designed by RF experts. You heard Darren talk a lot about radio frequency and 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7. Wi-Fi 10 years ago was really easy. You had one frequency, you had basically one device that connected to it, and it was typically your laptop that you plugged in somewhere, and the entire back of your laptop screen is the antenna. So it could connect to things quite a good distance away. That's not the case today. Today, the device that we're all carrying is, the iPhone or whatever Android that fits in your pocket. And the antennas are a lot smaller. They're multiple frequencies. They change in polarity when you carry the device, if you're streaming or if you're talking on the telephone, making that Wi-Fi call. It needs to be dependable, reliable, secure. It needs to go everywhere with you. And that's really what managed Wi-Fi is in a nutshell. And, a lot of folks out there typically looking to the cable MSO as that, first go-to, because as Brian alluded to, they've been in the property for 30 years. And today there are true managed Wi-Fi companies that specialize in RF design. Cloud 5 is one of those. We're in over 5,000 properties around North America, and we cover all of the different asset classes from multifamily apartment to hotels to resorts, shopping centers, you name it, we cover it. We're headquartered in Chicago, and I'll tell you a little bit more about some of our strengths. We've been doing this for 17 years, and we talk about, technology and the evolution of technology. And when an owner-operator is looking for a partner to put a managed Wi-Fi network into their property, this is something that they should be looking at. They need to be talking to those of us on this panel. We're really experienced in the RF space. We're very well vetted, right? I mean, we've been doing this forever. Brian and the others, Todd and so forth. We're backed by some of the best in the business. We're owned by Oak Tree Capital and Brookfield Asset Management. Some of the brands that we deliver to are coming up here on a slide. But I really want to get into one thing, and I have about 4 minutes, is the difference between managed Wi-Fi that we are delivering and that those of us on this panel are delivering, and that of the traditional MSO, which is really more of a subscription or retail play. Managed Wi-Fi works best when it's property-wide, curb to curb, and it's the primary service offering on your property. You own the resident, you own that relationship, and you should maintain that relationship for the life of their lease. And any property that they choose to live in of yours, they should expect that same experience when they move from San Diego to LA or to San Francisco or Chicago or what have you. If they're living in I'll reference Avalon Bay property, that experience should be the same, like it is in many of the major hotel brands. And so, that being said, having the ability to support that on a national basis is something that you should look for in an MSP. And Cloud5 can deliver that along with some of the other folks here on the panel today. By the numbers, managed Wi-Fi, as we've all talked about, it's the number one thing that people want. We're currently supporting over 5,000 clients. We do that with over 1,200 employees. We're managing currently hundreds of thousands of concurrently connected devices across our networks. And one aspect of our business model is our contact and call center. And I would love to talk to the owner operators out there about how Cloud5 can help you with that. Some of the flags that we have here and some of the brands that we are currently delivering our services to, so that y'all know a little bit about us. And by all means, please point your phone at the QR code that you see here on the screen. If you want to reach out to me, I'll be happy to give you my totally unbiased opinion about how awesome Cloud5 is and what we can do for your property. And that is it. So I hope we got that under 8 minutes there, Adeline, for you, and we'll give a little bit extra time to some of our other panelists. I know that we all have our own unique opinions about managed Wi-Fi, but truly it's about experience for the resident, for the owner operator, and any prospective resident as well. So
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. And just a reminder for the audience that yes, the event is recorded and the slide deck, all the presentations will be sent to you in the next 24 hours through the Zoom automatic email. So next speaker is Pierre Trudeau, is President and CTO of Positron Access Solutions. He'll be discussing leveraging legacy wiring in brownfields MDU. But this is an important perspective given that, as indicated earlier, 2/3 of the rental unit stock is composed of brownfield units. So floor is yours, Pierre. Welcome.
So thank you, Adlan, and thank you, everyone. We'll cover quickly how managed Wi-Fi is possible in brownfield MDUs. Is it a challenge? To some extent, but we can address that. So
Pierre, you're on mute.
sorry.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. So managed Wi-Fi is critical. We've seen all the benefits and advantages, but in order to get managed Wi-Fi to an extent in that brownfield MDU, one of the challenges, can you get connectivity to that brownfield MDU? And what we see is despite the rush to deploy millions of fiber miles across the US and other markets, oftentimes these brownfield MDUs have fiber right there in front of the building. You can see it. The tenant saw the crew deploy the fiber, but when it comes time to get connected, because it's a brownfield MDU, bringing fiber to every door is a problem. So that stifles the ability to provide not only adequate bandwidth, but more importantly, manage Wi-Fi. So earlier, Adlan kind of mentioned some stats. Less than 10% of recent or greenfield MDUs have managed Wi-Fi, which isn't that bad, but it's less than 1% in brownfield MDUs, which is still the larger part of the market. And according to the most recent census data from the US government, over 25% of the US population lives in MDUs. And that tends to be the younger crowds, the one that probably use a lot more of the internet. And what we see in other markets, like in Europe and Asia, it can be as high as 70% in the urban areas, the larger cities. And all that, as I said before, it's because there is no suitable in-building gigabit Ethernet infrastructure. And without that, there's no managed Wi-Fi. So let's find out how we can take care of that in what I would qualify as 3 simple steps. Number 1 is make sure that you leverage this fiber that is right there in front of the buildings to provide gigabit Ethernet connectivity in these brownfield MDUs without any construction work. Just reuse the existing coaxial cabling or the telephone pairs. Now we hear people say, well, my coax is bad, the telephone pairs were installed ages ago. G.hn is the solution that we're using, and we'll cover that quickly. It does provide gigabit Ethernet in all of those scenarios. Once we have that, we eliminate what I would have called the fiber divide, where fiber is right there in front of the building, but not used or deployed properly inside the building. And then you can have managed Wi-Fi. Without that proper connectivity to the building, there's no managed Wi-Fi that is possible. And also, although we center or focus mostly on fiber, we see an increasing number of fixed wireless, mostly millimeter wave technology deployments used to connect MDUs in markets where fiber is not yet ready and may not be ready for quite a number of years. So what is G.hn? It's an ITU-T standard. So it's an international standard, the same standards that define the fiber standards. Wi-Fi is more with the IEEE, and it's been around for a little while. The current version is called Wave 2 oftentimes, and it provides 1.7 gigabit of aggregate bandwidth to customers. When we say aggregate, sometimes people say, well, is it symmetrical? It delivers gigabit speeds in either direction based on the actual demand from the subscribers. And that sum of demand can reach 1.7 gigabits. I was at Fiber Connect last week. There were some interesting reports, and despite gigabit speeds being available, the typical rate is more like 40 to 50 megabits, and the peak usage by a given subscriber is about 300 megabits. That's when they got the gaming going and the video conferencing and massive downloads of content and so on. So there's still a lot of bandwidth out there that is kind of not used. So having a gigabit to each and every apartment, every living unit is more than adequate. And interestingly, you get more distance for gigabit Ethernet over telephone wiring with the 2 pairs that we find in most MDUs today for every apartment. We get 250 meters or 800 feet of connectivity. And if we do it over coax, the RG6 coax that is installed by the cable provider some time ago still delivers a gigabit at 800 meters. So 8 times the distance of structured wiring. And there's no work to be done. There's no physical changes to the network in place inside the MDU to leverage these technologies. And if you have an MDU with older coax, we still do a gigabit at 300 meters over 1,000 feet on cheap RG59. So the number 3 is let's not only use have fiber activated to the MDU is if you're a broadband service provider or whether you're a telco or a cable operator, if as increasingly everyone is deploying XGS-PON to serve areas where you can have a single family home, where you can have an MDU, the idea is that with G.hn or G.hn access multiplexer, or what we call a GAM, you can appear as basically an Ethernet switch to some extent, so an ONT that has a multitude of Ethernet ports, but they're all provisioned from the core network of the telecom operator as if it was a stack of individual fiber connections. So if you as a building owner or an MSP collaborate with a service provider, you can now get the best of both worlds where you can have the same services as the neighbors in a single family home get and deliver that connectivity to every elements, every areas of your property. And then it turns back into a regular gigabit Ethernet with PoE plus ports, so you can easily deploy Wi-Fi where you need to get it. But what's important is the seamless flow-through provisioning, and that's very useful to complement the self-activation, the ability to have the connectivity ready for when the tenant moves into the property. And I was monitoring the Q&A, and there was a question about what if I want to have multiple service providers into an MDU? Well, G.hn can be used and is being used with open access providers. So they provide the fiber to the property, and then they let multiple operators, multiple service providers to offer their access service over the same physical fiber plant. And then the tenants have a choice of 2, 3 service providers with different packages, different set of options that fits their requirements, their budgets, their preferences. So in doing this, not only do you have seamless connectivity, seamless management and activation with the service provider, you get the full Ethernet connectivity with bandwidth and formats of profiles so that you have this personal VLANs that follows devices as you move about the property. They also are managed as part of the same bandwidth profile. So you don't have to worry about the bandwidth that everyone gets. It's the same profile as when you are inside your apartment. And obviously, you can do the same thing with fixed wireless. Today, we see a lot of fixed wireless that is based on 5G. 5G is a great technology, no questions, but it's kind of victim of its own success. Operators like Verizon, T-Mobile especially have made a killing where about 80% of new subscribers are based on fixed 5G. That's kind of a placeholder and an early solution until they have millimeter wave 1 to 10 gigabit solutions where they can leverage the 5G towers that have been deployed everywhere. They have fiber there, they have power, and they can put these higher speed radios that do not overlap with the 5G mobile network. And they can deliver 1 to 10 gig, point-to-point or point-to-multipoint to different buildings, and then we still leverage the same existing infrastructure in the building to deliver the bandwidth and have the backbone Ethernet to support adequate managed Wi-Fi. So if we look at the 3 steps again, first is make sure that you have this connectivity that is right in front of the legacy MDUs. So where it's not easy to bring fiber inside the unit or use fixed wireless, but do it properly. Don't try to have fixed wireless with 5G where depending on which side of the building you're in, you get good or bad service. Make sure you can extend that broadband fiber directly inside the MDU and use the legacy wiring and going that with whatever the provisioning, the activation of the service provider all along the way. In doing this, we open a first door, which is gigabit to each tenant. And once you have that, then you're now ready to deploy and operate a managed Wi-Fi service across any portion of your MDU. And now you've opened the second door, which is managed Wi-Fi into the brownfield MDUs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pierre. Excellent presentation. Thanks for keeping it within the 10 minutes. And so now we are going to our last presentation, last but not least, from our friend Todd Thorpe, Vice President of Sales at Dojo Networks, who's a straight shooter, and looking forward to your insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Adeline. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you. Very honored to share the virtual stage with my friends and colleagues and to walk you through what we at Dojo Network see as the ingredients of successful owner and provider partnerships with managed Wi-Fi. From the provider perspective, our company was founded in 1996 by our president, Dan Myers. And as you can see from the timeline, we live and breathe this space, and we've been very active in it from the inception of our company. We deployed our first managed Wi-Fi
network in 2016, and today we serve over 250 properties in 24 states with a focus strictly in multifamily. We focus on off-campus student housing, traditional multifamily, senior, and affordable communities. Just a little bit about me, just to give you some context. So I began a career in telecom over 30 years ago. In 2006, I helped launch the multifamily sales division for what ended up becoming the second largest cable operator in the United States. I will echo what Shane said, is there is a clear distinction between what the MSOs are doing and what companies like Dojo, Cloud5, and Pavlov are doing. And yes, Brian Rader is the grandfather of Wi-Fi. So I think that's important to note. And then I joined Dojo Networks in 2020. So a successful partnership, just like, you know, in anything, is when all parties know exactly what they're getting into. Could be a friend, it could be a marriage, it doesn't really matter, but all parties need to collectively understand what is happening and what they're getting into. And we have numerous case studies on our website that go into detail on successful deployments. There are three main ingredients that all of these relationships have in common. And it starts with assessing your current situation, making your partner selection, and then finally formalizing that partnership. So this is really how it looks in each one of those points. So let's start with assessing your current situation. As an owner, developer, property manager, you want to start with defining what are your tenant and property needs. Kevin talked about at the beginning with his presentation, you know, over 80% of residents want internet when they move in, and 60% of it want it pre-installed. So try to understand, what is it that you're trying to achieve at your property? What problems are you trying to solve? Do you have an existing property with really poor internet service? Or are you building a property and you want to ensure your residents have that great experience when the property is built for when the resident moves in? So understand what it is you're trying to go for. And then in new build versus existing properties, there's a big difference between having an existing property that has to be evaluated versus a new build that's going to be a complete blank slate. Both are going to have their unique issues and differences. And then what type of property do you have in your portfolio? Do you have predominantly garden style properties? Do you have mid-rise, high-rise? Do you have value add assets that you're looking to make improvements to the property, whether it's new driveway, new blacktop, new finishes, new paint, or installing technology? Or do you have luxury high-rise Class A assets? A garden style from a design standpoint is going to be very different than a high-rise apartment. What is the state of the wiring? And this is important for existing properties. And Pierre did a fantastic job about, talking about existing coax and the ability to use that. What condition is the coax in if it's existing? Do you have Ethernet and fiber installed? How old is the wiring if you currently have wiring installed? We would advise that providers or owners have a provider come out and do a site survey to inspect the wiring, to inspect the data closets, look at the property, and make sure that we have a clear understanding of what that is, and then we can report back to you with what that kind of condition is and give you our best recommendation to move forward. This one is really important, and it gets overlooked a lot, is review your existing contracts. especially if you're purchasing a property, and are you assuming a bunch of telecom contracts that you weren't aware of? Be sure you can enter into an agreement that will not automatically put you in breach of another with another provider with a current contract that you already have. So make sure the last thing you want to do is start a relationship or a partnership with somebody, and then you come to find out you weren't able to do it. Understanding FCC rules. We talked a little bit about that. I know Kevin brought that up early on. The rules are ever changing. Make sure that you understand your rights and what you can and can't do at your property. Assessing your current situation, there are design considerations that you have to be looking at. Ethernet versus fiber to the unit. Both are great, but at Dojo, we would prefer Ethernet to the unit. It's more reliable, and it reduces the number of fail points. You can power the access point or the AP using Ethernet or power over Ethernet. With fiber, you need to have a second power source in the unit to power your AP. So again, there's an additional piece or component that can go wrong and fail. Indoor and outdoor common areas. Where do you want coverage? Do you want coverage at the pool, at the clubhouse, in the lobby, in the laundry room? Do you want it in the parking garage? Are you going to have EV charging stations? Make sure you're thinking this through and really plan ahead for your deployment. Is the provider installing UPS battery backup in every data closet in case there's a power outage? This is something that we do at Dojo because we want to keep the electronics on and powered up for as long as possible. Are they also installing a cellular out-of-band console server in the main data closet? This is also something that we do. So if the fiber is cut, we can still access the network remotely. And speaking of fiber cuts, we would recommend putting in a redundant circuit. So if the main circuit goes down, you have a backup. The idea is to keep the system up and keep it reliable and functioning as much as possible. And are they protecting you against technology obsolescence? So what do I mean by that? In our 27-year history, we have never lost a customer, and it's our goal to not hit our partners with costly equipment upgrades when it comes time to renew the agreement. So keep that in mind as you're evaluating and looking at your options.
You have 2 minutes, my friend.
Pardon?
Sorry, you have 2 minutes.
Which brings me to selecting your partner. So how long have you been in business? What is their experience with other property types? How many properties do they serve today? What is their approach to design? Is it reliable? Is it functional? What is their onboarding experience? Is it frictionless? Is it easy? What is their speed to answer? How fast are they resolving trouble tickets? So look at all of those numbers, and are they providing you with references openly without you having to ask for them? Extremely important. And then formalizing the partnership. Is the contract mutual? Look at that relationship because it should be mutual on both sides. What's included in that agreement? Make sure you understand the owner versus the partner responsibilities. What are you getting yourself into? And what are your options for underperforming? Look at the kickoff call. So after you sign an agreement, what does that kickoff call look like? How often do they do cadence calls? What is the marketing support? And what does the resident onboarding look like? And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Adley.
Thanks, Todd. Sorry to push you as we move on the program here. I know we're asking people's attention for a duration that's longer than a regular webinar. We still have a big crowd out there, so I really want to make sure that we start the panel and finally get the property owner's perspective, given that we heard about technology vendors, MSP, the industry associations. At the end of the road, it's property owners that make the final decisions and provide their feedback. So it's my pleasure to welcome Kaylin Ross, who's Senior Director Ancillary Services at the Avalon Bay Communities. Hello, Kaylin. Welcome.
Happy to be here.
Good. So, we're happy to have you. And can you tell us a little bit about Avalon and your experience with Managed Wi-Fi?
Yeah, sure. So, Avalon Bay, we're a big real estate investment trust, big developers, owners, and operators, ticker AVB. We are adopters of Managed Wi-Fi. We believe in Managed Wi-Fi. Because we are developers, we get to see Managed Wi-Fi from the very beginning all the way through the operations. And with that, we've got an interesting insight into some of the areas where we're super successful with this new technology, and some of the areas where we think we need some work, right? So my job is, I always like to try to come in and talk about some of those tough things, so that we can work together as an industry to, have joy in the success with the product, but also work to make it a better product, or give some real-time insight into what we're seeing. From a perspective of an owner, it is a technology enabler for us, right? And it does improve the resident experience, especially at move-in. We as an owner have done integrations with our property management systems, with all the managed Wi-Fi providers that we have used, and it survey backed up, right, does improve that resident experience. We believe in the product. We believe in providing something that is not available outside on the retail market. And we know Managed Wi-Fi is that. It's also, from a development standpoint, a yield booster, right? The economics of it are real good. And we can provide a high-speed internet in a way that's not found on the retail market at a very comparable price, or even discounts to what they can get on the retail market. So it's the economics make sense, and it fits the vision of improving the resident experience, right? I'd say all this is great, and Managed Wi-Fi is great, but I heard multiple times from some of the folks on the calls is if done correctly, right? And I think that that's an important thing that we have to remember as property owners, and the partnerships that were discussed with Todd is it does take a partnership. And because all these things are great, but if your infrastructure is no good, then you're not getting the full benefit of this product. So one of the things I just wanted to bring up is just the infrastructure side of it and the partnership needed on that end. So when we're developing a new property, or if we're doing a brownfield, whatever method we're moving on, it is important that we have low voltage design, and it is important that we use contractors that know how to certify our cables and not using the bottom bidder, right? That's such a huge foundation backbone into Managed Wi-Fi, is making sure that everything in the infrastructure is accurate. I'd say in a lot of our developments, that has been a tough thing because you're asking, it's kind of new. It's new to the industry. It's new to some of our developers, and it requires some changes into how we think about low voltage and that wiring within our communities. So my recommendation there for owners thinking about that is low voltage design is important. You need to know before you want to make sure you know what your contractors are bidding, and you need to make sure that they have proper work scope to get this stuff done correctly. On the flip side, we have had the best success with our internet service providers when they do a double check for us. So before they install the equipment within the room, the wireless access points, or in the media panels in the unit, that they perform some quality assurance and check to make sure that those cables are accepting 1 gig speeds. And that's the kind of partnership that we need, because oftentimes, if we provide a certification, it's been difficult to assume that everything's perfect. We want those double checks, right? And oftentimes, even with certifications, something happens when another provider's in. That double check is important. That infrastructure is needed when they do the install so that we can configure correctly, right? And that you guys can make the product the way that it's supposed to be. Without that partnership, all this is tough, right? It becomes tough when it's not operating correctly, right? The other thing that I wanted to bring up is when we say the word managed Wi-Fi, I think we need to manage. The word managed means different things to each provider, right? And I think it's important that us as owners talk to our providers about what exactly does managed mean for them. There's different levels of sophistication in the people's systems, and managed has different tiers to it. So I just be aware of what managed means. Is there transparency? Is there visibility into the managed network? Or does managed just mean, is it up or down, right? I think there's different levels there. And I believe in an MDU or a multifamily building or a luxury multifamily building, that transparency is important. And then the last thing that I want to bring up, and then open it up for discussion among the team here or other questions, is once we get the internet working, once we get infrastructure up, right? Equally important is the way we interact with our customers and the resident. And that interaction is important, especially at a new lease up, because the interactions that you provide to your resident are going to shape a behavior on who they go to when there's issues in the future, right? So outage communication, because we talked about redundancy, we know that's important, but what we know about internet is that there will be an outage somewhere, right? There's storms, there's fiber cuts, there will be an outage. So how are we communicating that outage to the property owners and the residents? And unfortunately, that's something that not all internet service providers have figured out quite yet, right? When it comes to multifamily tenants, especially in luxury apartment complexes, it is important to always inform and communicate and tell people when things are, and talk to people when there might be some intermittent service. We've got people that live in they work from their homes, they're in school, they're using their internet, as discussed, more than they ever have before. And so that communication needs to happen quick, and it needs to be concise. And then the customer service side, I want to echo what I said earlier. If the experience is bad on the customer service side, then we create a behavior where the resident now comes to the front desk of the property owner, and they start asking them internet questions. And property site teams aren't necessarily capable of answering those questions. They need to get pushed back to the internet service provider. And so we got to put a lot of stress around customer service. We've got to monitor customer service. We got to understand our interactions, and we got to be able to provide answers all the way down to the device, right? Because we've got a tenant base or a resident base who's smart, they're savvy, they need their connections, they need that kind of support. And I'll say the last thing, I'm going to add one more thing, just thinking top of my head here. Imagine a situation where a company like Avalon Bay, right, or some other big name company develops a nice community, and we've got a great brand recognition, and we want to manage Wi-Fi product, and our managed Wi-Fi provider is ABX, right? Just a random provider, and the resident has never heard of ABX. He's heard of Comcast and AT&T and all these different things, but he's never heard of ABX. But he researches our apartment. He shows that he or she sees there's managed Wi-Fi. He goes on Google and types in the ABX provider and sees 1,000 negative reviews and no positive reviews, right? So what I'm getting at is your brand management and your online management and your online reputation is important. And so I would put some time and energy into making sure that you're getting surveys when internet is good, not just taking the comments when the internet is bad, because nobody is going to provide a survey when internet's good, right? Nobody provides a survey when the hot water's hot. They only are going to talk about it when the hot water's not working. So creating some plan to help with that online presence, because that online presence can have an impact on the property owner and on the ISP provider that we decide to implement. And with that, those are kind of things I wanted to say. I'm open to answer questions, Adeline, and just be here as a resource.
Thanks, Ken. I mean, it's very useful. Obviously, I think the aspect of support and customer service is one we haven't necessarily addressed clearly. And the fact that you have MSPs that don't necessarily have a good reputation, or at least, as you put it, online reviews that are not quite good, can, reflect poorly on you as a property owner. Um, I wanted to ask you from a business case perspective, because we have some questions around that. Who pays for all of this, and is it the case that it's still a capex model or really an opex for you guys as a property owner?
Well, that really depends on the owner, right, and what they're able to do. I think the neat thing about managed Wi-Fi is there's a lot of different scenarios with our partners here, and if you have the capital, you can pay a lot on the capital up front and then have a lower OpEx, or if you don't have the capital, that OpEx can be, you can fund that through the OpEx, right, and have a little bit higher of an OpEx and maybe reduce your profit margin. So, it really depends upon the owner and how much capital they have access to. Obviously, from an owner's perspective, we want low OpEx and we want to keep it low. And we have the capital to pay for that, right? But a smaller community, a smaller owner might not have that capital, and they're able to still implement managed Wi-Fi and still create a meaningful product and still have a meaningful margin, but finance it through the OpEx costs.
Okay, makes sense. And are there any properties where you haven't deployed managed Wi-Fi yet? And if so, why?
Yeah, so we deploy managed Wi-Fi to all new developments. That is our standard. And I think I have got 30 communities in various stages, whether complete or contracting or wherever in those in between. Our existing communities today, we just have traditional bulk internet. And the reason we're doing traditional bulk internet is not necessarily because, it's really, we didn't want to make the investment yet in the infrastructure, right? Because it is a big investment, but we believe in it. So we moved to bulk internet as a way to, one, you start to shape the resident behavior in your communities to be okay with one provider, right? And two, you create those relationships with the provider. And hopefully in the future, if the technology's there and costs are there, you could upgrade or retrofit to that managed Wi-Fi product. There's meaningful value in the bulk and managed Wi-Fi initiatives. And they all are pushing us to our common goal of being able to provide a better product and a better internet to our residents.
Okay. Maybe a final question before I open it for other panelists to discuss is, are you using managed Wi-Fi in any way to improve your staff productivity and the overall operational efficiency for things like facility IoT?
Absolutely. So, most property owners today are deploying some sort of smart access or smart lock initiatives. And in addition to that, there's a lot of initiatives out there to help reduce some different staff or try to be more, not reduce staff, but just be more efficient with how we operate, right? And a lot of those solutions to be more efficient with how we deal with service tickets, with how we deal with our maintenance staff or whatnot, require connectivity or require cell connectivity. And cell connectivity is usually not that good within a mid-rise or high-rise building. And so managed Wi-Fi has been a technology enabler for us to be able to do that Wi-Fi calling. And I like that stat that was given earlier, to allow these type of mobile devices that we're using internally to help manage costs and make things more efficient. And then the last thing, again, I want to just reiterate, it's a technology enabler, right? Tomorrow, a new technology is going to come out. And then the next day, that technology is going to change, right? It's going to continue to change and update. We want to be able to have a solution at our communities where we can have a strategic advantage to the market. When these new things come out, we can implement them. And we can with the managed Wi-Fi infrastructure.
Okay, great. I'd like to mix it with some of the questions from the audience. There's one question that, Kaylan, you can address perhaps, is how do you acquire properties so as not to be burdened by a non-bulk close?
So
does that apply to you guys?
Yeah. So from a property owner's perspective, if our solution is to bulk, or if our solution is managed Wi-Fi, we look at those telecom contracts when we are acquiring community, right? Depending on the contract, depending on what's there, there might be opportunities to leave an acquisition, or a terminate, or a fee to terminate, right? Or sometimes there might not be anything and you might be stuck with it, right? We really don't think that bulk internet is going to drive the acquisition or not. It's one of those added benefits, right? When you purchase a community. But if you look at the contract, like was mentioned earlier, there usually is some opportunity to get out of one agreement so that you can bulk with another. And those are just things to look at. It's not always the case. Every community is different. Every contract is different. But in a lot of cases, there's usually some opportunity, whether it be pay money or at acquisition, you can get out.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I would like to open the panel to other questions as well. I think there is an aspect that we haven't touched yet very clearly, and that is the FCC rules for multiple tenant environments. And perhaps Kevin, can you tell us given you're in Washington up there, and tell us what's the view from the NMHC about those rules and what to expect, any new rules there?
Yeah, sure. So thanks. This has been really, really informative, even for myself. So I appreciate all of this. I think the regulatory environment in Washington, at least as it relates to multifamily and broadband connectivity writ large, we've really reached a sort of status quo plateau, which is a good thing. There was a significant period of time where the industry faced proceeding after proceeding, big questions being aired, for comment surrounding the future of bulk, which we do believe does ultimately or could have some impact on managed Wi-Fi systems. But inherently, the broadband market is hyper competitive. We do believe competition, even when there isn't necessarily consumer choice at a property, because of all of these reasons we've heard today as to why someone is either choosing to deploy a bulk system or a managed Wi-Fi system. We do believe that the market is healthy behind the scenes, and that is ultimately serving consumers better. Renters often have access to better, more reliable, cheaper, faster, you name it, better service than often what is available down the block in the single family neighborhood. So we have argued for quite a while that the FCC should really avoid causing damage to that marketplace, upending the relationship at a time, really, and we have to do a lot of connecting the dots in Washington, which won't surprise you, but connecting the dots between regulatory attempts to shift more of the cost or infrastructure burden to a property owner, what that ultimately does to housing affordability and ultimately the rents that a resident will pay. Clearly, that is job number one for us, is addressing housing affordability, but making sure policymakers understand all of the different pieces is hugely important. I know the reference or the regulation that we talked about briefly, at the top of the webinar, the most, I guess, recent significant one was really, at least from an ownership perspective, the biggest change was prohibiting graduated revenue share agreements. It also prohibited sale and leaseback, things that we didn't necessarily see as a huge issue, but it was really tinkering around the edges. And one of the sort of points of relief or assurances that the market is functioning properly was twofold for us. One was that the FCC did not raise questions around bulk or managed Wi-Fi, and really focused on that contractual relationship and ensuring competition is healthy in the marketplace. There's possibilities that the FCC could revisit that question. They certainly have left the docket open, that the MTE multi-tenant environment docket. But we, Matt Ames, who's our outside FCC counsel with Hubacher and Ames, and then Ian Davis, and just a plethora of telecom attorneys across the country I speak to regularly, do a great job of tracking what's happening at the FCC to make sure that the investments owners, and importantly, broadband providers are making in all of these networks are not upended by some type of, well-intentioned but counterproductive regulation.
Thank you, giving a very comprehensive answer. Darren, I'd like to have your views about what lessons have you learned as Cambium learned deploying managed Wi-Fi and MDUs. You talk about Wi-Fi 6, 6E, the additional spectrum, AFC, automated frequency coordination. Mm-hmm. But overall, what are the lessons from the vendor's perspective?
I think that you get the right product. There is no single one-size-fits-all, Wi-Fi technology or product. You'd have to pick the right product for the application. We described today high-density areas of an MDU. We described outdoor areas, apartment rooms. So get the right fit for the right zone. If you don't do that, it's going to complicate a lot of your RF planning. And even the automated tools to be able to flip a switch and say, okay, let the network sort of automatically adjust itself. It complicates that process if you don't have the right product. So pick the right products. Take a look at MDUs. Similarly, the way we look at things like student housing or even to a certain degree hospitality. These are relatively small rooms, 500 square meters to 1,200 square meter apartments in that range. And so understand that they're small enough that neighbor devices are going to see other devices. So pick the right product for the application. And then that's the number one thing that I see as sort of a mistake that happens. That's the number one mistake that I see. Another mistake that I often see is maybe trying to use older technology. So stick with Wi-Fi 6. I know Wi-Fi 5 is still out there. You can still pick it up, on the market. Cambium sells some Wi-Fi 5. We have some customers internationally that are still buying that technology. But I highly recommend stick with Wi-Fi 6. Set yourself up for the future, not the past.
Okay, thank you. Brian, can you tell us your perspective of what are the differences between, say, providing managed Wi-Fi to conventional rental units versus student housing or senior living or affordable housing?
Well, I want to comment quickly on something that Kalen said, which I think was very valuable. And he talked a lot about service. We spent some time talking about hardware and physical infrastructure on this call, but it's the human infrastructure that I think is critical. And it's always been that case. Managed Wi-Fi is no different than any of the other technologies that have come and gone in multifamily over the last 30, 40 years. Some companies treat it as a set it and forget it. And I think that's a mistake. I think that this technology still requires the personal touch, the management with on-site support. And as Kalen said, alleviating the resident going to the on-site staff with any issue, that's a terrible behavior and repeat behavior. And that will crush any relationship between the provider and the MDU. But as far as the differences, I think that with an older customer, it's not necessarily conventional versus student. With student, we know these are late teens, early 20-somethings, and they still require a lot of attention. So do the senior customers and often the older customers in traditional multifamily. I think you have to be prepared in the older environment with older residents to be on site, that you may not handle it through an 800 number customer care center. That may not be how you can solve whatever issue they may have with the network or with the technology. And so being visible and being on site and being accessible for that customer is very important. As far as the technology, I don't think there's dramatic changes as far as how companies like Pavlov and some of the others on this panel support different demographic groups. I think you have to be prepared properly to do that from a soft touch perspective.
Thank you, Brian. I know that a lot of the questions from the audience have been answered in the chat box here. Perhaps a question for you, Pierre. There's been talk about low voltage design. Seems to be an important aspect in brownfield. How do you deal that with your technology? Because it's a different aspect of it.
Yeah, well, GWHN is very tolerant with regards to older cabling, whether it's telephone pairs that where DSL may have some challenges, or it's DOCSIS that is very challenging in keeping a balanced network. GWHN on coax, for instance, does not require a balanced network, does not require amplifiers, so it does simplify the deployment. What we recommend is a site survey. I think oftentimes showing up there, spend, even if it's only a few hours, depending on the size of the property, to have an assessment of how the existing network is deployed is important to make the right decision and to provide a smooth installation and activation. So we recommend that. We've put together some processes to simplify going through the motion. But what we find at the end of the day is if the telephone wire is good enough for basic DSL, if the cable TV, if the coax is good enough for basic cable TV, it's good enough for GWHN. But you want to just understand how it is laid out so that you can get the most out of it. But it will work in pretty much anything out there that has been thrown at us.
Thank you, Pierre. Dan Myers has been very active on the chat box. So Todd, can you answer the question, what is your feedback on personal area networks with managed Wi-Fi?
Yeah, so a personal area network is really what's going to, there's two things. It allows mobility and security, which are the two probably biggest drivers of putting in managed Wi-Fi. Obviously, the result is a great experience for the resident. That's what we're all about, is trying to have a great experience for the resident and the leasing staff. But a personal area network is what allows that resident to move around the property as if they're behind their own router back in their unit. You know, people use the example, and it's really become cliche now, of I can be at the pool and, you know, print back to my unit a document. You know, nobody's really going to do that, but that used to be kind of the big selling point back in the day, and it's still used, but it's true. You could be anywhere on site. You could go to your residence unit or your clubhouse, and you have that personal ability to move around the property, and you're secure. You're in your own network.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Shane, so question for you. You know, with your experience at Cloud5, you know, what lessons have you learned? Interesting stories of challenges or crazy situations?
Yeah, I mean, I think that multifamily is a unique vertical, right? It's a unique asset class with a lot of different end users, right? You have the resident, you have the owner operator, you have the building itself, you have prospective residents. So understanding the property and understanding the vertical and the various subsets within the multifamily space, as some of the folks mentioned, student housing or senior living or affordable, whatever asset class it is, if it's Class A trophy high rise, you know, or if it's a 40-unit low-income multifamily property that's getting funding from BEAD, the RF design and engineering and support that goes into the network needs to be the same regardless, right? Support is the number one thing I think that people look for, and ensuring that you have the ability to answer the questions of the resident, answer the issues that may come up with the connectivity on premise. It will inevitably happen. So, being a huge support organization, I think that is, one of the main drivers in this space. And it's completely different from some of the other verticals. There's a lot of folks that just do hotels and they're really good at hotels, but when you have a transient guest versus a resident, who needs that connectivity more than they value hot water, I think it's really critical that you understand the property that you're dealing with.
Okay. Well, we're almost top of the second hour here, so I would like to maybe give you the opportunity for closing remarks before we end the webinar. Who wants to go first? Maybe you, Kaylin, as a property owner.
Sure. I just want to reiterate that it takes a partnership, and it takes that physical touch and that white glove touch with the multifamily residents, and that it is accretive and it is a value add that we can give to our residents. It just needs to be done correctly.
Okay. And you, Kevin?
Echo those words exactly. I think it goes at the heart of everything we do on connectivity is really the partnership between both sides of the equation, property owners, operators, and broadband providers, ultimately to serve our residents. That's the number one job for everybody here. So thank you, Adelaine, for having us at NMHC. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I'm hoping to be able to attend the OPTEC. I heard it's a great conference. And that looking forward to learning more stuff over there. Anybody else wants to provide some?
I'll just say,
remarks?
you know what? I don't sell. I like to say I don't sell a service. We create an experience for residents, because that's really at the end of the day what you're doing, and it's got to be that frictionless, always on experience for the resident, and that starts with a great partner. And we will be at OPTEC. So Adeline, maybe we can meet in person.
I hope to be able to. Yeah.
Go ahead, Shane.
This was a great panel, Adeline, and I really appreciate you, taking the time to reach out to the other panelists and partners here. Cloud 5, we're partnering with both Positron and Cambium. We deploy their product into all of the MDU asset classes we've talked about today, and it's really nice to have leaders within the industry, Kaylin and Kevin, really echoing the sentiments from the MSP perspective that it is about experience and that we are delivering an experience for the resident. Now, understanding that the customer, the property owner, isn't in the internet business, right? They're in the business of renting space, and so let's allow them to do that very successfully. We just give them another valuable tool in their toolbox to do that. So thanks everybody.
Yeah, and I was just going to echo the same thing. I think the one element of our tech is to understand the objectives of the real estate investor, real estate owner, and to apply it properly. It's not the same on every project, and everyone is unique. So be open to understanding what their objectives are as well.
Thanks.
And I would add that don't disregard your brownfield MDU folio. It's a massive asset you have out there, and you can offer the same level of managed Wi-Fi, the similar level of services to your tenants as you do in the brand new properties. And there was a question early in the panel about security of personal area networks. There was a great answer there, but I would add GWHN offers port isolation and crypto along with VLAN support. That means that even two subscribers on the same coax cannot talk directly to one another. So you have full physical security at layer 2 to complement what is done as part of the managed Wi-Fi. So rest assured your tenants are not exposed in any way to any of the challenges that are there with the internet. And as they move about, they still benefit from the same, not only to print from the pool side, but also to have, I guess, assurances that things like parental control that you want for your kids as they move about the property, they still, I guess, are controlled or secured by these parental controls that you put in place for your kids. And that's important as well.
Thank you, Pierre. And Darren, I'm sure you echo that.
No, have a great day, everybody. You guys are awesome. Thank you all very much. These guys on this call, Adeline, I know some of these guys from 20 plus years ago. These guys have 20, 25 plus years of experience in this market. Fantastic. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the audience for sticking around for so long. The event has been recorded. It will be available for replay the next 24 hours, along with all the assets, the slide deck, everything. And I know that you guys have been in contact with the panelists to address some of your questions, and we'll be there to help in any way we can. So thanks again, everybody, and see you hopefully at Optech.
Thank you, Adlan, for setting this up.
Thanks.